AITA for canceling the wedding after my fiancée admitted she regrets leaving her ex? I am a 29-year-old male, working as a paramedic. I have been with my fiancée Jessica, 27, for 3 years. She is an elementary school teacher. We were supposed to get married next spring. I own the house, and she moved in about a year ago. But that is where things started getting weird. Around February, she began acting differently. She spent more time on her phone, would not let me see who she was texting, went to bed earlier, and was generally distant. When I asked her what was wrong, she blamed it on work stress or wedding planning stress. The phone thing really bothered me. We used to be totally cool about it. If hers rang while she was in the shower, I would answer it. Normal couple stuff. But suddenly, she became extremely protective of her phone. She would place it face down, take it to the bathroom, and stopped leaving it to charge anywhere I could see it. I tried talking to her about it, but she insisted everything was fine. She said I was being paranoid, so I backed off. I started working overtime to save money for the honeymoon. We had talked about going to Hawaii since she had never been and always wanted to see the islands. I was sometimes working over 60 hours a week, which meant less time at home and less time to notice her strange behavior. The last few weeks before everything blew up, she was practically a different person. She kept playing the role of my fiancé, talking about the wedding and our future, but it felt fake, like she was playing a part instead of actually being excited about marrying me. But I was still in denial. I kept making excuses. I thought once the stress of wedding planning was over, everything would go back to normal. I was completely wrong. Last month, we were supposed to go out to dinner at an Italian restaurant she had picked. Nothing special, just a Tuesday night date. I was looking forward to finally spending some quality time together since we had barely seen each other all week, but she had been acting weird all day. I got home around 5 p.m., and she was already dressed, sitting on the couch, just staring at her phone. When I said hi, she barely looked up. I asked if she was ready to go, and she said yes in a flat voice, as if she were doing me a favor. We got to the restaurant, and the hostess seated us at a nice table by the window. Finally, I asked her for probably the third time what was wrong. She put her phone down and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her before. Nervous, but also excited. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Blake reached out to me." Blake, her college ex. My stomach immediately tied itself in knots. She told me he had found her on Instagram a few weeks ago, that he was thinking about her, and that he had made a mistake when they broke up. They had been talking, really talking about everything, about how they never should have split up. I asked if she had been texting her ex for weeks without telling me. She said at first it was not like that. They were just catching up, but the old feelings came back, that what they had was different, intense, passionate. Then she dropped the bomb. "You know what, Jacob? Blake made me feel like I was drowning in the best way possible. With you, I feel like I am floating in a kiddie pool. It is safe, shallow, and incredibly boring. I keep wondering if this is really love or if I am just settling for you because it is practical. Maybe Blake is better for me." And there it was. She had just said our 3-year relationship was boring, that I was merely practical, and that her ex was better for her, in a restaurant. I sat there for probably 30 seconds, just looking at her. She looked nervous now, as if she was starting to realize what she had just said, but she did not take it back. "All right," I finally said. "Now nothing is stopping you." Her face went white. I told her she had just said her ex was better for her, so she should go be with him. But not while living in my house. She tried to backtrack, but I was done. I threw $40 on the table, told her I was going home, and that I expected her bags to be packed by the time I got there. The drive home was surreal. 3 years together, 6 months engaged, and she had just told me I was her consolation prize. That a guy who dumped her in college was a better option than the guy who bought a house for her to live in and was about to marry her. I kept replaying those words. Drowning in the best way versus floating in a kiddie pool. Safe, shallow, boring, practical. Those words were going to stay in my head for a long time. When I got home, she was on the couch crying, but I was done with her tears. I told her to start packing. She tried to argue, but I went into the kitchen and called the bank to close our joint account. While she was talking, I also checked my other accounts to make sure she had no access. It took her about 2 hours to pack her bags. I did not help her. I just sat at the kitchen table and let her figure it out. When she finished, she stood by the door with her suitcases, looking at me like she expected me to change my mind. She asked if I wanted the engagement ring back. When I said yes, She placed it on the coffee table. Before leaving, she said it was crazy to throw away a 3-year relationship over a single conversation. "You are the one who ruined everything," I replied. "I am just cleaning up the mess." And that was it. She left, and I was suddenly single after 3 years, sitting in a house that was way too quiet, staring at an engagement ring on my coffee table, wondering what had just happened. The next morning, the calls started. First my mom, then my sister Sarah, then my dad. News travels fast when you are supposed to get married in 2 months, and the fiancé suddenly moves out. I kept it simple with everyone. I told them Jessica had decided she wanted to be with someone else, and I was not going to fight for my own fiancé. My parents were furious on my behalf. My mom wanted to know if another man was involved. And when I told her about Blake, she got angry, saying Jessica was throwing away a good thing for a fantasy. My dad was more practical. He asked if I needed help contacting the wedding vendors or canceling things. Sarah simply called Jessica a complete fool, which honestly made me feel better. The hardest call came from Jessica's parents. Her mom called me crying, begging me to work things out with their daughter. She said Jessica was just confused and scared about getting married, that having doubts was normal. I tried to explain that this was not just pre-wedding jitters, but she did not want to listen. Her dad left me a voicemail saying I was giving up too easily and that relationships take work. I did not call either of them back. What was I supposed to say? That their daughter told me I was boring and merely practical compared to her ex, that she had been having an inappropriate emotional connection with him for weeks. They would not have wanted to hear that anyway. The most complicated part was our mutual friends. Within a few days, people started reaching out to ask what happened. I made a decision early on. I was not going to trash talk Jessica, but I was not going to lie to protect her feelings either. When people asked what happened, I simply replied, "Ask Jessica about Blake," and left it at that. That simple phrase said everything they needed to know. Most people are not stupid. They could piece together what happened from there. And honestly, I wanted her to have to explain herself. I wanted her to tell our friends why she threw away our relationship for her college ex. The news spread quickly. Our friend group is not huge, maybe about 15 people in total. And within a week, almost everyone knew the gist of the story. Reactions were mixed, but most were on my side. The guys all agreed with me. They understood why I could not stay with someone who had practically called me her backup plan. Some of the women, however, thought I was being too harsh and that I should have tried couples therapy or given her time to figure out her feelings. But honestly, no way. I am not going to therapy to convince someone to choose me over their ex. I am not going to sit around while my fiancée decides if she wants to be with me or another guy. That is not how it works. The worst part was dealing with all the wedding planning. We had already put down deposits for everything. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, the DJ, the flowers. Some vendors were understanding when I explained the situation. The photographer, for example, was cool. She told me she had been doing weddings for 20 years and had seen it all. She only charged me a small cancellation fee. Others were much less sympathetic. The venue kept our entire deposit, saying it was too late to book the date for someone else. The caterer wanted to charge us for the food we had already ordered. In total, I lost about $8,000 in deposits and cancellation fees. $8,000 for the privilege of finding out my fiancé found me boring. But here is the thing. I did not ask Jessica to chip in for the financial losses. I could have taken her to small claims court to get half the fees back, but I wanted a clean break. Losing that money hurt, but it was worth it to never have to deal with her again. About 2 weeks after she left, I heard from a friend that Jessica was posting on social media about following her heart and not settling for less than she deserved. That pissed me off more than anything. She made it sound like I was the one who was not good enough, like she had outgrown me or something. But I did not respond. I did not post anything to tell my side of the story. I did not try to set the record straight publicly. I figured the truth would eventually come out on its own, and getting into a social media war with my ex-fiancé would not help anyone. The hardest part was simply being alone in the house. For over a year, I had gotten used to having someone there when I came home from work, someone to cook with, watch TV with, talk about my day with. Suddenly, it was just me and way too much silence. I threw myself into work, taking overtime whenever I could. Staying busy helped, and the extra hours would make up for the money I lost on the wedding deposits. My work partner, Mark, knew what was going on and was great. covering for me when I had to call vendors or handle wedding-related stuff. The guys at work were also very supportive. Some had been through divorces and told me I was lucky to find out who she really was before marrying her rather than after. They were right, but it still hurt. For about 6 weeks after all this, my life was actually pretty good. I know it sounds weird considering my engagement had just blown up, but hear me out. Once the initial shock and anger passed, I realized what a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. No more wondering why she was distant or why she was hiding her phone. No more wedding planning stress or arguments about the guest list and centerpieces. I could come home from work and just relax without analyzing every conversation for a hidden meaning. I had blocked Jessica's number and all her social media right after she left. So if she tried to contact me, I would not know. And honestly, I did not want to know. She had made her choice very clear when she told me Blake was better for her. As far as I was concerned, she could live happily ever after with her college ex and leave me alone. Around that time, I started talking to an ER nurse named Megan. Nothing serious at first, just conversations during the quiet moments between calls. She was nice, funny, smart, and honestly very pretty. But most importantly, she did not seem to have any drama with a crazy ex-boyfriend. The contrast was striking. Megan laughed at my stupid jokes, asked me about my job, and remembered details from our previous conversations. All those basic relationship things that Jessica had stopped doing months before our breakup. It made me realize how detached Jessica had truly become toward the end. I was not looking to jump into anything serious right away, and Megan seemed to understand that. We were just two people enjoying each other's company without any pressure or expectations. It was incredibly refreshing after years of relationship drama and wedding stress. Then one afternoon, my friend Kevin called me, laughing. I was at home doing some chores when my phone rang, and at first, I could barely understand him because he was laughing so hard. "Dude," he finally managed to say, "you are never going to believe this mess." Kevin works with a guy whose girlfriend is friends with one of Jessica's fellow teachers. Small world, lots of connections. Anyway, apparently the news of what happened between Jessica and Blake had reached him. "Your ex got dumped," he told me, still laughing. "Blake dumped her." I sat on my couch trying to process what I had just heard. "What do you mean?" "He dumped her. I mean, he used her for about 6 weeks, then told her he did not really love her anymore, that he just wanted to see how he felt or some nonsense like that." The irony was unbelievable. After all those speeches about their great love story and passionate connection, Blake had just used her for a fling before tossing her aside. Once again, exactly like in college. According to Kevin's source, Blake had been pretty blunt. He allegedly told Jessica that getting back together with her made him realize they had both changed too much since college, that what they had was probably just nostalgia, and that he did not see a future with her. Basically, something she should have figured out before destroying her engagement. And wait, that is not all, Kevin continued. Apparently, she has been calling him nonstop to get him to change his mind. The guy had to block her number. Hearing this, I felt a weird mix of emotions. Part of me felt validated. I had been right. Blake was a scumbag who was going to hurt her again. Another part of me wanted to laugh at the irony of the situation. She was finally tasting her own medicine. But mostly, I felt relieved to have dodged that bullet. Over the next few days, I learned even more details through word of mouth. My sister Sarah told me that Jessica's mom had called my mom crying, saying her daughter was going through a tough time and asking if there was any chance I would agree to talk to Jessica. My mom politely but firmly told her no. She told her Jessica had made her choice and now had to face the consequences. About a week after Kevin's call, I was at the grocery store when I ran into one of our mutual friends, Lauren. She had been at our engagement party and was supposed to be a bridesmaid. It was incredibly awkward seeing her, but she was pretty cool. "I just want you to know," she told me, "that most of us think you handled the situation really well. What Jessica did was really wrong, and you had every right to leave." It felt good to hear that. Sometimes, when you are in the middle of drama, you start wondering if you overreacted or made the wrong decision. But hearing someone who knows us both say, "I made the right choice," was reassuring. Lauren confirmed what I had heard about Blake. Jessica truly thought he was going to drop everything to be with her. She was even talking about moving in together. It was completely delusional. Apparently, Blake lived about 3 hours away, had his own life, his own job, and probably other women he was seeing. The idea that he was going to give it all up for a woman he had already dumped once was frankly ridiculous when you thought about it. But that is what happens when you build a fantasy in your head based on nostalgia and emotional infidelity. You convince yourself they are this perfect person who got away, when in reality, they are just a flawed human being who already showed you once that they did not want to be with you. A few days later, Jessica started trying to contact me. She called from different numbers since I had blocked hers. I did not answer any of them. Then she showed up at the fire station where Kevin works part-time, asking him to pass on a message telling me how sorry she was and that she had made a huge mistake. Kevin told her to get lost. He told me later that she looked like a wreck, like she had not slept or eaten properly. A small part of me felt bad for her, but a bigger part thought she deserved every bit of misery she was feeling. When showing up at my friend's work did not get my attention, she decided to try another approach. She wrote a massive Facebook post about our relationship and breakup. I did not see it directly since I had blocked her, but Sarah took a screenshot and sent it to me. The post was a complete rewrite of history. According to her version, I had never truly loved her and could not accept that she had a romantic past. She claimed I had abandoned her when she needed support the most and that I was too immature to handle adult relationship problems. Not a single word about Blake. Not a single mention of the fact that she had told me I was boring and practical compared to her ex. Just a bunch of lies to make it look like I was the problem and she was the victim. But the comments were pretty brutal. Several of our mutual friends called her out for rewriting history. Someone wrote, "Did you not leave him for your ex?" Another person replied, "That is not how I remember the story at all." Even people I did not know were saying her story did not add up. She deleted the post after a few hours, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen her trying to make herself look good by painting me as the villain, and most people did not buy it. That is when I realized she was truly desperate. When someone starts making up stories on social media to smear their ex, they have hit rock bottom. And I was incredibly glad to no longer be part of that chaos. My 30th birthday came around about 3 months after everything went down. Normally, I am not a big fan of birthday parties. To me, it is just another day. But my family has always made a huge deal out of birthdays, especially milestone ones. And they certainly were not going to let me ignore it just because I was recently single again. I had started seeing Megan more often over the previous month. When I mentioned my birthday party, she seemed excited about meeting my family, which was a good sign. The day of the party, I woke up feeling pretty good. 30 years old, owning my own home, a solid job, great friends, and I was seeing someone who did not think I was boring or merely practical. Honestly, it was not a bad spot to be in, much better than where I thought I would be a few months earlier when I was stressed out by wedding planning and Jessica's weird moods. Megan arrived around 3 p.m. with an incredible chocolate cake she had baked herself. She remembered I had once mentioned hating the artificial taste of most store-bought frosting. So, she made everything from scratch. Her little thoughtful gestures meant more to me than she probably realized. My mom loved her immediately. They spent almost 20 minutes talking about the cake recipe and cooking in general. My dad was grilling burgers and invited Megan to try his secret sauce that he normally does not share with anyone. Sarah pulled me aside and whispered that she approved, which was huge because Sarah never liked any of my girlfriends. The contrast with how Jessica behaved at family gatherings was quite stark. Jessica always acted like she was doing me a favor by showing up, as if spending time with my family was a chore she had to endure. She was polite but distant, constantly checked her phone, and later complained about how long the gatherings lasted or how my dad always told the same stories. Megan, on the other hand, genuinely seemed to be having fun. She asked my mom for embarrassing stories from my childhood, laughed at my dad's cheesy jokes, played cornhole with my brother David, and held her own. She fit right in, like she had been coming to family gatherings for years. Around 6 p.m., we were all sitting around the fire pit my dad had built last summer. Good food, good company, a few guys telling stories about dumb calls we had been on at work. I was thinking this might be one of the best birthdays I had had in years, definitely better than last year when Jessica spent the whole time on her phone and barely acknowledged it was my birthday. That is when someone knocked on the front door. At first, I thought maybe it was a neighbor coming to complain about the noise or asking us to move some cars. We had been pretty loud, and it was a Saturday night. But when I opened the door, Jessica was standing on my porch with a wrapped gift and this big fake smile, like nothing had ever happened between us. Happy birthday, Jacob. I just looked at her. She looked different, thinner, like she was not eating properly. Dark circles under her eyes, like she was not sleeping well. Her hair was different too, shorter, like she had cut it herself or gone to a cheap salon. She was trying to look happy and confident, but I could see the desperation behind it. What are you doing here, Jessica? I brought you a gift. Can I come in for a minute? The conversation behind me in the backyard had gotten quieter. People were probably wondering who was at the door and if everything was okay. The last thing I wanted was to bring this drama into my birthday party with my family and Megan there. You cannot just show up here uninvited. I know, but it is your birthday, and I felt bad that we are not talking anymore. I just wanted to give you this, and maybe we could talk for a few minutes. She held out the gift like it was some kind of peace offering. Probably something she had bought months earlier when we were still together, before she decided Blake was better than me. The whole situation was unreal. My ex-fiancée showing up to my birthday party after telling me I was boring and practical, after getting dumped by the guy she left me for. Talk about what? I burst out laughing, which seemed to surprise her. You regret what we had? You mean the boring and practical relationship? The kiddie pool. Her face turned red. She was probably hoping I had forgotten that remark or that time had softened the blow of those words. But you do not forget when someone you love tells you that you are their backup plan. She tried to walk back her words, saying she was upset when she said that she did not really mean it. But we both knew she meant it. People do not say things that specific and hurtful unless they have been thinking about it for a while. Just then, the front door opened behind me, and Megan stepped out. Everything okay out here? The look on Jessica's face was priceless. She went from hopeful to surprised to angry in about 2 seconds. You could almost see the gears turning in her head. I was supposed to be sitting at home, miserable and lonely, waiting for her to come back. I certainly was not supposed to have moved on, especially not with someone who was clearly attractive and confident. Who is this? Jessica's voice got loud and high-pitched. Megan calmly introduced herself. She said she must be Jessica. She was incredibly professional, not taking the bait and refusing to get dragged into the drama. She simply acknowledged the situation and remained calm. You are already dating someone else? Jessica was getting louder. It has been 2 months. Actually, it has been almost 3 months since you chose Blake over me. I corrected her. And yes, I am seeing someone who actually wants to be with me. That is when Jessica completely lost it. She started screaming that I had never fought for our relationship and that I had replaced her like she meant nothing to me. Classic projection. She was the one who threw away our relationship for her ex, but somehow I was the bad guy because I was moving on with my life. Megan stood there, visibly uncomfortable but not backing down. She did not try to defend herself or argue with my ex. She just stayed calm and let Jessica make a fool of herself on my front lawn. The yelling drew attention from the backyard. My dad came around the side of the house to see what was going on. He took one look at the situation and told Jessica she needed to leave. When she refused and kept yelling, Sarah came out too and told her to get off our property before they called the cops. My family had never really liked Jessica, but they had been polite for my sake. Now that we were no longer together, they did not have to pretend anymore. Sarah in particular had zero patience for this kind of behavior and did not hesitate to say so. But Jessica was not done. She was having a full-blown meltdown now, probably realizing her grand gesture was not going as planned. She had surely pictured showing up with a gift, and me being so grateful she wanted me back that I would forget everything that happened. Instead, she was screaming at my family while my new girlfriend watched the scene. Not exactly the reunion she had hoped for. Finally, she stormed off toward her car, but before getting in, she turned around one last time. This is ridiculous, Jacob. Do you not think it would just be easier if we got back together? We have 3 years of history. I looked at her standing there, mascara running down her face, holding a birthday gift for a relationship she had single-handedly destroyed. 3 months earlier, this woman was my fiancée. Now, she was a stranger throwing a tantrum on my lawn because I had the audacity to move on with my life. Easier for who? I shot back. Because for me, everything seems pretty easy right now. She got in her car and drove off, peeling out like a teenager throwing a fit. I went back to my party, where Megan squeezed my hand without asking any questions. My family was annoyed but got over it quickly. The rest of the evening was really nice. It was as if Jessica's visit had been some strange intermission that we all decided to ignore. I never opened her gift. I threw it in the trash the next morning without even looking at what was inside. Whatever it was, I did not want it. That chapter of my life was closed, and no birthday gift or dramatic gesture was going to reopen it. About a month after my birthday incident, I heard through the grapevine that Jessica had moved back in with her parents. Apparently, she could not afford her own place on a teacher's salary without someone to split the bills. The irony was not lost on me. She had abandoned a relationship with someone who owned his own house and had a stable career for a guy who used her for 6 weeks before dumping her. I also heard she had taken a leave of absence from her teaching job. I do not know if it was voluntary or if the school suggested it after her behavior became too erratic. But it must not have been easy explaining to her co-workers why she was suddenly single and back at her parents' house after being engaged just a few months prior. Kevin kept updating me on the gossip, probably more than I needed. Apparently, Jessica was trying to reconnect with other men from her past, not just Blake, as if she were going down a list of exes hoping one of them would take her back. It is pretty sad when you think about it, but that is what happens when you burn bridges for no good reason. The funniest part was finding out how Blake reacted when he heard about her visit to my birthday party. Apparently, someone told him she had shown up at my place, and he was furious. He called her crazy and told mutual friends he was glad he got out when he did. The guy who convinced her to leave me was now trash-talking her to anyone who would listen. That is how guys like Blake are. They are great at convincing women to make bad decisions, but they disappear the second things get complicated. He filled her head with stories about their epic love and how they were meant for each other. Then he vanished as soon as he got what he wanted. And now he was acting like she was the problem. But honestly, I stopped caring about Jessica's drama pretty quickly. I had more important things to focus on, like building something real with Megan and advancing my career. That whole situation taught me what I truly want in a relationship. Someone who chooses me first, not someone I have to convince that I am worth their time. About 6 months after our breakup, Megan and I decided to move in together. She was already spending almost all her time at my place, and financially, it made sense for both of us. But more importantly, it felt right. I was not nervous about the commitment or worried she would change her mind. When you are with the right person, these decisions feel natural instead of forced. Then 2 months later, I ran into one of Jessica's co-workers at the grocery store. Lauren, the same one who told me I had handled the situation well. She told me Jessica was teaching again, but at a different school across town. Apparently, she needed a fresh start, away from the people who knew the whole story with Blake. Lauren also told me Jessica had been asking about me, wanting to know if I was still with that nurse and if I looked happy. The fact that she was still checking up on my life through mutual friends meant she was probably not doing as well as she wanted people to think. But that was not my problem anymore. I had completely moved on. I had built a new life with someone who actually wanted to be with me, and I had no interest in the ongoing drama Jessica still seemed to be struggling with. Some people learn from their mistakes and grow. Others keep making the same bad choices, wondering why their lives do not improve. The wedding dress she bought was probably still hanging in her parents' closet somewhere, an expensive reminder of the life she threw away for an illusion. Meanwhile, I was building something real with someone who thought I was worth fighting for instead of seeing me as a backup plan. A year after our breakup, Megan and I got engaged. Nothing grand or dramatic, just a quiet proposal during a weekend getaway we had planned together. That is when Jessica finally broke her silence. She sent me a long text from a number I did not recognize. She had probably borrowed someone's phone since I still had her blocked. The message was a full-blown novel filled with apologies, explanations, and begging for one last chance to explain herself. She said she was in therapy and realized she had made the biggest mistake of her life, that Blake was an illusion and I was reality, that she had spent the entire year thinking about me every day and regretting everything that happened. She claimed she was ready to fight for us now and wanted to meet up to talk about getting back together. I did not reply to that message. I did not even acknowledge it. Jessica had already said everything she needed to say a year earlier when she explained that Blake was better for her. Nothing had changed, except that her backup plan had fallen apart, and she realized the good guys do not stick around waiting forever. Jessica taught me what I do not want in a relationship. Megan showed me what I truly want, and that is worth everything. Comment. What I really take away from this is the quiet strength in knowing your own worth. You do not have to raise your voice or engage in drama to make a point about how you should be treated. Sometimes, the kindest and most powerful action is to simply draw a boundary with clarity and conviction. Letting go of a situation that disrespects you is not failure. It is a profound commitment to your own peace. True healing starts the moment you stop explaining your value to someone who is committed to misunderstanding it. Remember that you are the one who sets the standard for how you deserve to be treated. When you choose self-respect, you create space for people who will genuinely honor you. Be kind to yourself during this process, because protecting your heart requires immense courage. Always choose the path that leads to your own well-being and inner calm. Your happiness is worth defending. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.